Hello, my lovelies. My name is Gilbert Dolthalion, and the plan for today is to talk about fitting all of your craft and sewing supplies into a space where you don't have a dedicated sewing or craft space. As you might be able to spot, we recently went from being two adults in a flat that has 2 rooms to being the same 2 adults in a house that has 4 stories, including the cellar and the attic. And that means that for the very first time in my life, I'm going to be one of those lucky buggers who gets to have their own dedicated sewing space. But I know a lot of you aren't as lucky, so before we moved I took the time to go over what I'd developed in order to keep my stuff in the space that we had, so that I can share some of those tips and tricks that I developed over the years. And I'm just going to preface this by saying this is not sponsored by IKEA. If IKEA would like to sponsor me, I would be very happy given the amount of money that we just spent there. Please sponsor me, IKEA! And with the begging out of the way, let's get to showing you how I had things set up in the old flat. Honestly, this is the most important part of any small sewing space, and it is an Norden from IKEA. These things are a lifesaver. So it's about 25 centimetres when closed. When opened up with one leaf, it's 90 centimetres, and when with both, it's like 150. It's pretty perfect for sewing. It's a good height. It's also got storage drawers on the side, so we use ours for trimmings. Then got bias binding in here. That's spare fabric. But underneath that there's interfacing. Those are my fabric patterns, which I need to figure out a better storage for, but that's where they live at the moment. This isn't where our tripod actually lives. It's where it lives when I can't be bothered to put it away, because there's a convenient gap there. On this side, I have got zips. This is cord, and the bottom is elastic and Velcro. And I forgot there's also lace in this one too, so that's my Norden. This is what makes this whole space tenable. Without it, I wouldn't really have a space to sew. I've sewn in small spaces before, but this just makes everything so much easier. This is my desk, which is where I do all my editing and everything like that. I have all of my sewing stuff out on the top at the moment because this is where I do a lot of my hand sewing. You've probably seen it in a lot of my videos. This is my in progress drawer, which essentially makes it a dumping ground, which is very bad, but there we are. So I have receipts from my current project in here, which is Xerophil. I need to go through them still. And the spare thread from him. Obviously I've got the book, and the pattern is underneath because that's huge and I need to fold it down. That was a present. That is my cloth for washing down embroideries, because I've still got this one that I'm working on slowly but surely. Very slowly but very surely. And I've also got my to-do list in there too. My hats I store out because I love to dust apparently, so we did have plushy toys between cuddly toys. They've been packed already. So we've got our 2 Shakos from Monstrous Regiment up on the top. And then underneath, you can just about see, that's Finland's hat. I did in our previous house, I had him hanging up on the wall. In the new house, I might try and do something like that. But the problem with those 3 is that they're interfaced. I should really get a hat box for Finland's at the very least, but, you know, they're all self-made. They're not proper hats. Although I'm pretty proud of the Shakos. So that's those. On the top here, we have 2 boxes that I will get down with Cosplay. One of them is my wife's, and the other one is a vacuum pack bag with all of the costumes that I don't wear very often. Not all costumes can be vacuum packed. For example, I'd never vacuum pack Glorfindel because of all the beading on him. I'd be worried about it piecing the bag. But I'd also be worried about what it would do to him. I can't iron him properly. This is Snufkin's hat, which I specifically made so it would be able to fold down. Doesn't need to be particularly straight because it's Snufkin's hat and it's always on a bit of a slant, so with a bit of straightening up, if I do it properly anyway, he looks fine again. So these are all things like, I've got my Pokemon Go trainer in there, I've got Wolfram in there, I've got Shigure in there. So they're all pieces that don't have a lot of decoration on them. I've also got Snufkin in there, so it's a real mixed bag. These are ones that I want to go through again before we move, because I think I'm ready to get rid of some more now. Before we moved out of the UK, I got rid of, honestly, about 2/3 of my costumes, but there were some that I just weren't ready to get rid of yet. And now that they've been sitting in a box for 2.5 years, I think I am ready. So that is my job before we move, to actually go through this bag again. If I want to wear any of these, I kind of have to wash them before I wear them again because they're so crinkled. So, you know, it's a kind of balancing act, but it is worth it because of how much space it saves. This is my wife's cosplay cupboard. She's already gone through hers, so it's already a lot sparser than it was before. We've also got her wedding dress in here and her work clothes. And this is Glorfindel, who also lives in here. And I've also got Moomin in here because this cupboard is longer than the other ones, so the 2 long ones are in there. Those are my wife's wigs. They were until recently in a drawer, but that's been emptied out, so we're going to do something with those once we move. But this works quite well. These are all my wigs, plus my styling equipment, so I've got my curling tong in here, and there should be straighteners somewhere, yeah, straighteners as well. And my wig brush. I was planning on showing you guys how I pack for conventions, but what I do is I put the wigs that I'm bringing with me in a convention in this bag. It's already got all of my wig caps in it, or most of them anyway, so I don't forget those as well. I have always stored my wigs like this. They're in plastic bags, and then normally in a net as well to keep it all together. So this is the only wig that I've ever stored differently. This is Denki, and you can probably see, or possibly see, that he's spiked. I will try and remember to stick a picture in. His wig was properly spiked, and when we lived in the UK, I made up a box with a wig cap inside the box that he could sit on. If I've got any pictures, I'll insert those as well, but I don't think I do, sadly. And I stored him in that as well to preserve the spikes, so I could transport and store him that way. The only reason that I took him off there is because he needs to be redone. That is the only wig that I don't do a lot of spiked haired characters. I don't do a lot of short haired characters, to be honest. Honestly, I try and avoid wig styling as much as possible. So most of my wigs are absolutely fine in plastic bags. I've never had a problem with that. When I take them out, I give them a good brush, and then give them a good brush when I arrive as well, and that's normally enough. Things like Glorfindel and Rainier do need to be styled occasionally because they're long wigs. So I normally prepare them before the convention by styling them again, but in between they still stay in their bags. This is my other cosplay wardrobe because I only need one side of the wardrobe because I don't have a lot of clothes. I have significantly more costumes than I do real life clothes, which probably tells you a lot about me. Most of them are just hanging up. I've got the longest ones on the right side and the shorter ones on the left side. So that underneath I can have 2 shoe boxes, and they've got all of my accessories in. So in here I've got, for example, that's Finland's mask from Pirate Finland. Fans as well, in the hoping that then I remember to bring them with me to conventions, which I normally don't, but there we go. So, for example, those are from Glorfindel's costume. Those are from the Elrond costume that I did back in the day, which was dreadful. But I keep them as a reminder. That's the rest of Glorfindel's. This is his ears and his hair clip. I use this, which is my Terry Pratchett pin. I use that when I'm doing Aziraphale's jacket. I just pop that on the jacket because, you know, GNU Terry Pratchett and all of that. That's Hal's jewellery in there. So it's kind of a mixture, this one, of old costumes that I don't have anymore. That's Yellow again, for example. I don't have that costume anymore, but I want to keep the accessories from it. Same with Elrond because they're a reminder, and then current ones as well. So this is something when we move that I will want to split up into current and non-current and try and get it a bit neater. So this is the other box, and this contains all the fabric accessories. These are the shoe caps. That's Standard Finland and that's Pirate Finland, and they go on the top of the boots that I wear for him. That's the bow from Finland's sailor uniform. That's a little bag that I made to go with Pirate Finland so that I can put that on his belt and I've got something to shove stuff into. That's the ribbon that I painted like a ridiculous amount for and they didn't need most of. So they are sort of divided, these two boxes, but not really. And my belts I keep at the back of the wardrobe. They're all just looped around a hanger so that they can fall down. And then these are, well, these are also accessories really. So for example, I've got the white leggings that I keep because these are actually proper thick leggings, so those are really good for cosplay. I've got a lot of costumes that need white leggings, which probably should have actually been hose, but I used leggings for. I've obviously got a pair of boots in there which aren't cosplay, but those are my proper work boots. I've got cosplay gloves in here, so these ones, for example, were for Elrond when I did him originally, and I've used them for someone else since. That's Siritama again, that's Urara's tie, that's Finland's beret. It's a real mix in here because I've also got my own ties in here. That's Denki's tie, but that's my own tie, for example. I used to have them hanging up in my wardrobe, and I think I will do again once we move. I've also got my wadding underneath here. That's to finish off a Xerophil with, but it's so thick that I needed somewhere else to put it. And then on the top, I've got Lizzie. She lives up there in a plastic bag to try and keep her from getting too dusty. Now, these guys you have seen before, or if you haven't, it's my very first video on this channel. Was it first? No, it didn't actually come out first, I don't think. It was the first one that I recorded. These are our fabric tubs. I think there's another one hidden behind as well. They're still more or less folded, even after 2 years. I think I've had them like this now, more or less. It worked out really well. I'm really glad I did them this way. Ideally, we wouldn't have had them under the bed. We would have had them with everything else. But for a safe space, saving way of storing fabric, I do kind of recommend this because they're on the side. You can see what's in there. Because I put down the lengths, I can just pull them out and see what I've got in there. So now we're out of the bedroom and into the living room. This is where my wife stores her sewing notions, and I've got my embroidery box here. And this one has got all of our thread in it. With our thread, we have got quite a lot between the two of us when we combined the two lots. So what we've done is split it up. This is all of our natural fibres, which wasn't a lot until recently. That's now starting to grow. This has got all of our mending thread in it, plus metallic thread. We've got one box with black and white, plus these little bad ones that we've collected from various kits. These are greens and blues and purples. And then underneath we've got the rest of the rainbow. In a small space, this has worked really well. We've had them in here like this since we moved. So they've worked really well like this. I'm pretty pleased with this solution for these. This is my embroidery box. I keep small hoops in here. I don't normally keep all of my hoops in here, but at the moment I've only got one spare one, so that's living in here as well. And when I'm not using my normal one, that's normally in here as well. Now, these have got a bit messed up recently. I need to sit down and tidy this up before we move. But I've transferred most of my thread onto little cardboard slips so that I can just flick through and find what I want. And then I've got my silk one still separately here. I had an emergency commission that I had to do a little while ago, so I had to rummage through quickly to see if I had the colours that I needed and then run out, and I never fixed it. That is the problem with the small space, is that you have to be on top of things, you have to keep things tidy or they just get messy like this. I will probably keep this solution when we move, honestly. This works quite well for me. So that took me a minute or two to tidy up with free hands. That's what it looks like when it's not a mess. This is the main area where I store things of my fabric stuff. I did originally have the Norden in this corner here, but we had to move it when coronavirus started because this is our main room. Please excuse all the boxes we're currently unpacking or packing. We have one huge room and I can't be in here sewing while my wife is working. So that's now in the bedroom, and honestly it's got much better lighting in there anyway, so it worked out quite well. So on the top here, These are all of my patterns. These are the rest of them. These are my bags of scraps. They're too small to do a full project from, but they're large enough to do embroidery from, or things like I use scraps from these to do dice rolling trays, for example. These are where I store my cosplay shoes. For example, that's a pair of shoes that I've made. Those are England shoes on the bottom there. It's not the most ideal way of storing them, but it works quite well for a small space. The boxes were really cheap. They were like €2, €2.50. So we figured that if they got messed up by shoes, it wouldn't really matter. You can see this one's got boots in. In the bottom, we have my sewing machine. So I also keep the tools for cleaning it down the side here as well. I apologise for the light, I'm kind of being blocked in by our packing. That's my sewing machine, and obviously when the table was here, that made sense to have it just underneath. We've also got a plug just underneath there. This box is my in progress / to do box. That was a Christmas present that needs a couple of stitches in it. I've got the mock-up from Aziraphale. I've also got the fabric for his doublet in there. This little box has been really useful just for keeping things out of the way. That's essentially my UFO pile. So then on top of here, which is just in the corner because that was the best place to put them, where they didn't keep falling off every time I pulled something out, it's my metal ruler and one of my tailor's hams, the one that doesn't fit in with the other one. When we move, I want to actually have a chance to use the hooks, so I'm probably going to make some hooks to hang those up on. This is the last of my fake callot boxes. I've got my normal sized tailor's ham on the top there, and then underneath this is the box that I keep all of my notions in. So if I pull it out into the light so you can see, this is a little box that's got all my little stuff in. It used to have all of my threads in before we moved, but now it's got little things. It's got thread scissors, tailor's chalk. This is my bobbin case, which has got all my currently in use bobbins, and then filled out obviously so it's not wasting space. I've got my scissors in here, so 2 pairs of fabric scissors and a pair of zigzag scissors, a pincushion, which you guys have seen from last Christmas. This is the pincushion I use when I'm sewing, because I use the top to put thread in, so that's really useful. That's got some vintage pins in that you can see I got for 30p from a charity shop, so those are my backup pins essentially. More buttons, more buttons, more buttons, and that's pretty much it. So, oh yes, and obviously everyone has one of the tomatoes, so that's my tomato. So that's my notions bag, and as you can see it's a pretty good size to fit pretty much everything in, so I really do love this bag. And I realised there's one other thing that I should show you that is also a part of cosplay, and that is all of my makeup. For irony's sake, this is my makeup bag. So when I go to conventions, I take the whole bag, and I have this one and this one that I will pack with just the stuff that I need for the day. So that's got a lot of the stuff that I use regularly for cosplay in there. And then this one, which is just another little bag, I use to store all the stuff that I don't use so often. And yeah, that's everything. And that's it. Stay tuned for a quick sneak peek of my new space, but before then let me just give you a couple of top tips and tricks that might help you think about how you organise your space or spaces. My first tip is to think about dual use, like my Norden that served as both a sewing table and as storage, or my desk which is both my editing space, my sewing space, and has my drawer for my to-do list in. All of the things that I have, I try to make sure could serve as many uses as possible to save space. In a small space, every single thing needs to serve as many uses as possible. My second tip is to think outside the box. Does everything need to be packed away, or can some things also serve dual use as display or be out on display in some other way? There are obvious downsides to this.
things are going to get sun damaged and you're going to have to do dusting like with my hats, but sometimes putting them out on display is the easiest way to make sure that nothing gets damaged because it's there and you can see it. Plus, you know, you've made these things, why not have them out where you can see them and enjoy them? And my final top tip is to keep track of what you have. I don't necessarily mean trying to keep strictly to a KonMari style or to try and keep to a minimalist style. This is not a minimalist hobby. What I do mean is regularly going through what you have so that you know exactly what you have and you don't accidentally go out and buy doubles or things that you don't need. Make sure what you have in the house you're going through regularly and using. Now I know we're all victims of that person who's gone, ooh, that's a pretty fabric, or ooh, that's a good sale. So I'm not trying to tell you to stop doing that. I'm just trying to say, make sure that you know exactly what you've got so that you use that stuff that you've gone, ooh, that's so pretty. This is one of the reasons why I put my fabric in those clear boxes under the bed. I could just draw them out, see exactly what I had, and see if I needed to go to the shops or if I could do the project from my storage. Same with my embroidery threads. Putting them on those little pieces of cardboard means that they're not all layered in a pile inside that box. So when I open it up, I know exactly what I've got and I don't go out and buy doubles. So as a reward for listening to me ramble through all of that and for the awful camera shots, which I do apologise for, here is a quick sneak peek of my new space. As I mentioned in my 2020 year in review video, I will be showing you the progress of this room, so stay tuned for a couple of building my new sewing space blog. Now my question for you today is an obvious one. What tips and tricks have you developed for storing your stuff? Especially those of you who also live in a small space. I hope that one day you get to live the dream that I'm currently living, but for now you have the best methods for keeping everything small and organised and tidy. And I know that you are all going to come up with amazing tips, so I highly recommend that you guys have a quick skim through the comments, because let me tell you, I do read every comment that goes through and some of you guys have the best ideas. Thank you for watching through to the end, and as always, a huge, massive thank you to all of my subscribers. If you enjoyed this or found it helpful, please think about giving me a like or subscribing if you're not already for more sewing and costume related content. Stay safe, stay sensible, and I shall see you again soon. Bye!
So here's a secret. I meant to film the preview before we moved in. However, it didn't happen. I also get to have my very own bathroom, which, most importantly, means I can have tea on tap. I have my priorities straight.